All right, we're back with more NFL coverage, and in this one, I will be going over what I have is the final mock draft just before the real thing kicks in later on tonight. As of the recording of this video, I'm doing this very early in the morning, midnight region of things. To be completely honest, I was thinking about doing this at a far earlier time to try to get as far out ahead of it as possible. And of course, we're still here. More than likely, this will be out at least a few good hours before the real life event even kicks off. So that should be timely at the very least. And up to this point, a lot of different things have occurred that have changed the direction in which some of these teams will take through the draft. They may not want to be as aggressive or need to be given some of the moves they've made. They may want to dial it up if they have sold some of their better assets and look to carve out a greater future from this draft forward with the assets that they pick up in this one, or are at least looking at on their respective big boards to reel in if they are given the opportunity to do so by the time they select. So you have multiple teams with first round picks now as a result of some of these trades. And again, the way that some of these prospects have been covered as well, when it comes to some of the reports that may or may not be true about a good number of them, that stock has risen for some and fallen for many others. Meaning that for, the most part, aside from a few potentially surefire things, the entire draft is, frankly, still up in the air to this point. So again, this is all just, my own opinion, along with, having watched at least some of these players consistently from the last college football season and getting to at least become a bit more familiar with who a lot of these guys can be as potential prospects in the NFL, what they might mean for certain teams. So it doesn't represent necessarily what they're going to do later on. But with all that being said, I'll get into it starting out essentially with the first three picks, because through all this time, they haven't changed for me. Not a single bit. They are Mendoza at number 1, Arvell Reese from Ohio State at number 2 to the Jets, and the Cardinals at number 3 taking Francis Mauigoa, the tackle from Miami of Florida. In that order. Now again, will that be what goes down exactly? Especially when we talk about Reese and Mauigoa to those respective teams? Maybe not. At the same time, I don't know. When you hear about the profile on Arvell Reese, and when you still take into consideration that on the right side, the Cardinals are still looking for reinforcements to that offensive line that they could use. In terms of prospects, you're not getting much better than Mauigoa. And while, in fairness, they could take a chance at Jeremiah Love, in theory, you have got to be able to provide him with ample space to work with as a runner. Of course, he's got the talent to perform at an exceptionally high level. At the same time, if you don't have a fortified offensive line to line him up behind, it isn't worth a damn thing. You saw it when Genty got drafted to the Raiders just last season. As great of a running back as he was coming out of college, with the historic season that he had at Boise State, being the bell cow for that team and that rushing attack, He could not find open lanes to save his life. And maybe that's a testament to some of the defenses that he was playing against. But that run blocking for that offensive line had been so bad over the past couple of years. They were literally a bottom 3 team in 2024 in terms of rushing yards per game as a squad, with some underwhelming running back prospects to say the least. And you bring back most of the same offensive linemen heading into 2025. And what ended up happening? They end up ranking towards the bottom in terms of the rushing attack, in terms of yards and yards per attempt in the entire league once again. And the goal for the Raiders as well later in this draft should be to try to build around Mendoza. And you do that as well by getting Tyler Linderbaum as a center in free agency. So that helps immensely. You need more. Whether it be talent on the outside, whether it be, again, building up the core of that 5-man front to protect him at all costs. And whoever is going to line up in the backfield alongside him. That should be the ultimate goal for the Raiders. And I have a feeling that no matter who the Cardinals field out at quarterback, again, you want to give them the room to operate and showcase the best they can possibly offer this Arizona team. And that will not happen until they start addressing more of their issues on the offensive line. And it begins here with them getting Mauigoa. As for Reese, again, they're saying that this is constantly back and forth between Bailey and Reese. Yeah, it's really hard for me to say that Reese would just not be the move here for the Jets, to be honest with you. I think his potential as an edge rusher is something that the Jets just cannot afford to miss out on, to be honest with you. I gotta reason with you there. But moving on from that, at number 4, I have the Titans taking Jeremiah Love to at least take, in theory, if they were to select them, you're probably seeing Tajay Spears get a diminished role. Somebody's going to. Because Jeremiah Love, I can't say he can't miss per se, but he's ranked as one of the more elite prospects in the entire class for a fucking reason. And by far the most elite running back in the class. In fact, the only one, given that kind of grade per PFF themselves. Now again, you can't rely on them for everything. But even the eye test would tell you. And if you're in the Titans position, again, anything that you can do to take the burden off of Cam Ward and give him a formidable running game to hand the ball off to and rely on, to conserve his own energy as a passer and as a potential scrambler out of the pocket, that makes things incredibly dangerous for this Titans offense as they are looking to find an identity. They have a number of issues as it is. And I get that the receivers for them might not be as great as you'd like. But having a run game of that sort opens that up. And when you already, again, don't necessarily have household names, but they do have some good talents in their own respects. And so whatever you can do to compound on that, if you're the Titans, is going to be valuable. It's not that they're completely devoid of talent. They have to start rounding out their roster. That's how this goes in a rebuild. Jeremiah Love controlling their backfield? That would be something epic to watch. Absolutely. Most mocks they say that he'd probably not end up going past 4, and he will make the cut right there. For the number 5 overall pick, I had the Giants taking Sonny Styles. Not too different from what I projected to happen in the earliest mock draft that I put out and explained per an earlier video of mine in regards to the draft process. Same reasoning there, so I'm not going to spend too much time on that. And I don't go for any of them that I see line up exactly with what I had before. Just to try to, again, make this a quick process. For the 6th overall pick, I have the Browns taking a chance at Carnell Tate. And actually, again, not on that video, but in other mock drafts, I've been thinking to myself that yes, while I previously said that they could take Spencer Fano from Utah, at the same time, they need wide receiver talent, and they need it. They needed it yesterday. Jerry Jeudy, sure, he had that season for them. Only what exactly did that end up leading to? And was he ever really that consistent? No. And then outside of him, all question marks all over the place. There just aren't many reasons where you have guys like Gage Laverdine, for example, getting a real receiving reps with this team on a week-to-week basis. That is how outmatched their core is compared to that of other wide receiver cores around the league. Carnell Tate is younger. Yeah, he had who cares about his 4.5 40-yard dash when he's one of the smoothest route runners in this entire draft class? If not one of, some people say he's the smoothest route runner in this draft class. You see, it's not always about stretching the ball down the field, although he can do that too, and displayed that a ton last year at Ohio State. You are getting a wide and versatile package from Carnell Tate. And he stands at 6'2". The ideal frame you want in a potential number 1 wide receiver. So I'm thinking, if I'm the Browns here, while I was initially saying that they could let him slide all the way down to 24, I have to go back on that now, renege on that, and suggest that no team can be that stupid to let Carnell Tate slip all the way down the draft and all the way down the first round like that, if he is still available by this pick. And I think the Browns, using one of the earliest shots they have, go for it, as they rightfully should. For the 7th overall pick in this draft, I had the Commanders taking Caleb Downs from Ohio State. So again, bumping him up a little bit here, but I think the reasoning would work out the same for Downs as well. A safety that can do it all and will, especially for a Commanders team, fill so many different gaps for them as a player. Even if in his rookie season he isn't all the way there yet, he's going to be asked to. This Commanders team will need way more moving forward, considering their situation at cornerback and just overall defensive back. They have a terrible, terrible defense. And we knew that already. You've lost some of those pieces, and now you're trying to map things out to see who you are trying to build around defensively. As good of a corner as Mike Sandra still is, I don't know if that is a guy who you would say is a player that you are focusing your entire defensive approach around. And if you are, that's a problem. So if there is anything that you can do to, again, just experiment a little further, refine this, and at least make the steps necessary to improve that defense, your best shot might be to make an immediate positional upgrade. Because there's no guarantee to suggest that even if they were to get Mansour Delan, for example, he's going to be an immediate upgrade over all the corners that they have. But Caleb Downs, compared to the safeties that they were fielding last year, whether it be Darnell Savage Jr., who now isn't even with the team anymore after his brief and underwhelming stint with the team, or also another rookie safety that was just not very good for them last year. I like the odds of Downs getting some early opportunities to assert himself into the lineup and become a star on this team. At the number 8 overall pick, I have Mansour Delan from LSU going to the Saints. Still, no change there. At the number 9 overall pick, I have the Chiefs using their first overall selection to take David Bailey from Texas Tech. Yeah. I couldn't have envisioned myself saying that a little over a month ago. To be completely honest with you, when I last made one of my earlier mock drafts. It's an interesting timeline we're in. Very interesting. But when you look at it, the Chiefs, they have lost some of their core defensive pieces, really, throughout this entire offseason. And while you do have George Karlaftis currently getting paid, you don't have Charles Omeni, who again, it wasn't really all that good to begin with, but whatever. You've lost some of your depth at that edge rushing position on the opposite side. Chris Jones, while he's still a force as well, he's not getting any younger. And this is an interesting time for the Chiefs overall. You can consider 2025, 2026 for them a bit of a, I can't even say, It just was in a total aberration, you would hope. It brings upon a lot of questions. Were they going to keep around this existing core? Were they going to completely change the dynamic of this team? What direction were they going to take next after having Mahomes suffer that injury? A lot of different questions creeping up there. And one of the best plans they could do right now is, again, one, recoup in a cost-effective way. So again, you get rid of Jawan Taylor, but of course you have a number of different ways to attack recuperating on that specific move right there, on top of some of the other losses they've suffered throughout this offseason. And two, really, it's about thinking towards the long-term future of the overall team. You want to get a player who can, in a way, especially if they're a first-rounder, not necessarily have all the answers right away, but give you an opportunity to build up some depth early and then have them start to become star caliber players in the years to come and contribute to winning football. That is your thinking if you're the Kansas City Chiefs. And well, why not David Bailey at this position, considering he came from Stanford through the first 3 years of his career, then went to Texas Tech, and they instantly became a CFP contender. Now, of course, that doesn't excuse what the hell they allowed Oregon to do against them. But that progression right there, on top of what he contributed at Texas Tech last season, does bode pretty well for a Chiefs team who is trying to make themselves a bit deeper on that front. And any amount of quality talent there helps. Because you bring in Bailey here, you have Ashton Jelani, who they drafted last year as well. Again, not a player who's necessarily gotten a lot of time, but as they continue to get more experience and become more seasoned, there's an opportunity for them to at least become quality rotation pieces on cheaper contracts. And the Chiefs desperately need that kind of balance between the two, especially when they had to restructure Mahomes' contract in the first place. For the 10th overall pick, of course, this would be a little different because of the fact that Dexter Lawrence II was traded for this straight up on the part of the Bengals. The first time that this had ever happened in their franchise history, and one of the first times this has ever gone down since like 1962, per Adam Schefter. Nonetheless, they're not complaining about it necessarily. Dexter Lawrence II was going to cost too much, and to have another bite at the apple here never hurt anybody. So, with that, the Giants hold the rights to this pick now, and I have them selecting Spencer Fano from Utah. Now, again, he's listed as a tackle. They have mentioned throughout this entire draft process that he has the versatility to play at every single position on the offensive line. So I would have him getting picked here with the potential for them to turn him into more of a guard. Preferably on the left side right now, if they're really holding that much faith in Daniel Falele to do his job on the right side. And if he can be listed as a tackle, if one of Evan Neal or Andrew Thomas are hurt, you can slide him over. To know that you have that portability in just a single player who can make up for some of those faults on that offensive line, that's going to do wonders for them, especially if these injury issues do continue. You want them to slow down a little bit, but there's your countermeasure. Getting a guy like that who can literally, whether it be guard, whether it be center, whether it be tackle, line up in each of those spots and not miss a step. The league will definitely test them, but just off that profile alone, you have got to look into that a little bit. At number 11, I have the Dolphins taking Olaiva Vega Yane, so that has not changed. With the 12th overall pick, I have the Cowboys still taking C.J. Allen from Georgia, although there have been a few mock drafts that have done some pretty good digging here and honestly raised some really good questions as to what the Cowboys could do. There were talks about them trading up to get Sonny Styles. There were talks about them trading up to get Monsieur Delan, which would actually be really good because they do need a cornerback. So, again, when it comes to a mock draft like this, it's only a free one. I don't have the PFF account, so I couldn't even make trades work. You also have to take some of what I'm saying with a grain of salt, because the opportunities for draft day trades are absolutely real and possible. And this could be a scenario where they decide to move up and position themselves to get a player more desirable for them and what they may want to do. Because again, honestly, we still have no idea. We just don't. At the 13th overall pick, the Rams hold the rights to it, and I have them selecting Monroe Freeling from Georgia, the tackle. With, again, Rob Havenstein retiring, it is a direct one-to-one replacement there. Even if he doesn't play all that much, I think just having an extra body there on that roster early so that he can start to get some exposure in the NFL is heavily important for this Rams team. And especially as they try to prolong this window that they believe they have with the likes of Matthew Stafford leading that squad at the quarterback position, coming fresh off an MVP season last year. You don't know how many years he has left at this point. And with that in mind, you would like to ensure that he is healthy throughout this period of time. As healthy as he possibly can be. Freeling could add to that equation if he does translate those skills over to the pros. At the 14th overall pick, I have the Ravens taking Jordan Tyson. No change there. I'm still holding firm in that. Now, again, some have dropped him all the way down to late first round because of the injury issues that they are taking into stock here, which again makes sense. It's all a part of the process as people try to create these smoke screens, right? Then I saw something earlier. Oh boy. Because Peter Strager had created a mock draft. He was explaining it a little bit on the Pat McAfee show. He had the damn Giants taking this man at 10. And I'm like, what? For them to get multiple number one caliber guys in Malik Neighbors and Jordan Tyson, both with injury history to an extent, I don't really know if they could. I don't really know if they could pull that off. That would be insane, but I can't personally see that from my perspective right now. The only way that something like that would happen is if, again, and even the Ravens themselves might be in a position to have to trade up if they do feel that another team is going to get their hands on Tyson early and go draft him with the 10th overall pick or something like that. Again, it's all a mind game. It's all about chess. You have no way of knowing what exactly the other team in front of you or behind you is thinking about. Even multiple picks after you, a different team could try to craft a draft day package for you that you aren't anticipating whatsoever, just to get access to a player who you happen to be looking for at the same time. It's crazy what can go down on draft night, truly. And some wild things could be happening surrounding Jordan Tyson. So I just really tune in to that and see, just monitor if that is something that takes place. With a 15 overall pick, I have the Bucks selecting Reuben Bain Jr., the edge rusher from Miami of Florida. Damn. Honestly, again, I shocked myself with that. The way I mapped out everything, this is just how the chips happen to fall. Do I really believe that Reuben Bain Jr. will fall outside of the top 10? Honestly, I don't think that he should, just because he has short arms and stuff like that. And also now there's something else coming out a couple years ago with him being involved in a particular accident that took the life of a different driver on the road. Which again, you can question why that information is coming out right now as we speak. But if there is merit to that, unfortunately, that is something that could factor in to diminishing the value of that draft stock just a little bit. The Bucks, when I think about it, they could use an upgrade at the edge rusher position. That wouldn't really hurt them all that much. Especially with one of their main edge rushers last season being Anthony Nelson, of all people. If Ruben Bain Jr. did truly happen to fall down to them, I don't think they'd waste an opportunity to select him at that spot. That would be a split-second decision for them, in my opinion. Initially, I had them taking Colton Hood because, you lose Jamal Dean, one of your stronger corners, and I'm just thinking, hey, if Hood is projected to be this quality of corner, then he's worth nabbing at that spot. And that rationale could still be fair. However, Bain Jr. is just an absolute force of nature. And could you imagine the amount of damage he does with a fully healthy front four consisting of playing alongside Vita Vea and Kalijah Cansey? Dear goodness. Dear goodness. That is fucking scary. Both of those guys, Cansey and obviously Vita Vea, are run-stopping forces. And then you're bringing in a specialized pass rusher like Ruben Bain Jr. It's the perfect complement. So again, I don't know if he's necessarily going to fall down this far. But if he does, they will not pass this up. At the 16th overall pick, the Jets hold the rights to it, and I have them selecting Colton Hood from Tennessee, with them essentially trading away all of their corners at this point. You need reinforcements, and you have to start somewhere. So I have them starting a little young. Of course, they'll probably have some other veteran corners in there that aren't as high quality themselves, but decent enough to bridge the gap. Colton Hood, if he does become a part of this Jets defense, is honestly a player that I think Aaron Glenn would want to really teach genuinely. And I do say that for any corner that they might want to bring in. We can look at Aaron Glenn's tenure as head coach and suggest that, oh, hey, he was this horrible for them last season. We can say that. We can't forget about how great Aaron Glenn was as an actual corner in the NFL. And when it comes to defense, of course, last year was just fucking ridiculous, okay? You can't excuse anything that took place on that field from the defensive side. The only way to go from there is up. And so again, he cleans house. He hires new staff. And now the plan is to, bring forth some new players who can pride themselves in playing those positions. So as all of those guys start to come in, Aaron Glenn is most certainly going to make that clear. I think Colton Hood is a prospect that he'd take a liking to and really try to hammer a lot of information into to mold him into a truly sound player at that position. All over. And not just in how Sauce Gardner was, again, traditionally a good cover corner, but had slippage in that and could not tackle as well as you would have liked them to. So that could be an interesting situation there. The 17th and 18th picks for me are similar, as I have the Lions still taking Keldrick Falk from Auburn, the edge rusher, and I still have the Vikings getting the Harrison Smith, but faster prospect in Dylan Thieneman from Oregon. I still just see that. Like, he's actually increased his stock a little bit, so that could get interesting. They literally have a chance to prolong the livelihood of that kind of safety, specifically in their own organization. And he's actually that good of a prospect. At 19, though, I have a bit of a change here with the Panthers picking up Kenyon Sadiq, the tight end from Oregon. And initially, in an earlier mock draft, I had them selecting Peter Woods from Clemson, the interior defensive lineman. Now, when it comes to their tight end situation, it is just, there's a lot there, and not a whole bunch to show for it. Like, Tommy Tremble is okay, but would you consider him reliable? No. You have Mitchell Evans. You have Jatavion Sanders. A lot of question marks at that position. Genuinely. And they still have yet to figure out who is really their main guy here. With Kenyon Sadiq's ability to not only serve as a tight end, but to also line up out wide and become a wide receiver in certain instances, is pretty damn valuable for this Panthers team. Because there is your answer, especially when it comes to a receiving threat type of tight end here. That is the answer right there. And I think if he does fall to this position, some mocks had the Bucks getting him, for example, which could happen even though they still have Cade Otton. The Panthers would absolutely love that. And wouldn't that just be a slap in the face to the Bucks to go out and get him? Man, that would be very interesting. At number 20, I still have the Cowboys taking Avion Terrell. At 21, I still have the Steelers taking Makai Lemon. And at number 22, I still have the Chargers taking Emmanuel Pragnon, the guard from Oregon. Although some mocks did have Keldrick Falk coming to this team, which I can also see happening if Falk was to slide down a little further in this draft. Would not have an issue with that whatsoever. Because you think about it from this perspective, Khalil Mack did sign this one-year deal recently, but he is on his way out of the door. He could very well retire at the end of this upcoming season. That is the time they are in. And you do have some promise there. Tui Pulotu had a spectacular season at the edge rusher position for them last year. You still need somebody to complement that on the other side. And ideally, you would go young by getting the youngest edge rushing prospect, or one of the younger players overall in Keldrick Fall in this draft, to get as much out of him as possible. If they were to do that, he's learning from a very great Hall of Fame caliber veteran in Khalil Mack. Still, though, I feel like with them losing Zion Johnson and with them suffering the amount of injuries they have on the offensive line, they mentioned Pregnon's availability in his profile. That is important for this Chargers unit as a whole, to make sure that you are keeping Justin Herbert protected as frequently as possible, considering what the hell happened the second just two of their linemen went out. Could you imagine if this was an overall problem? And at times it became that way. And what happened? He got banged the fuck up. So I see this as an opportunity for them to boost that a little bit. Try to bring in some reliable reinforcements. At the number 23 overall pick, there was a bit of a change. I initially had them taking Kenyon Sadiq in one of my earlier mock drafts, but now I have them taking Blake Miller, a tackle from Clemson. In the same sense, in respect to Khalil Mack, Lane Johnson is more than likely also, between some of the recent injuries he's dealt with in a matter of age, he is also nearing the end of his career. And while the Eagles could stave it off and just ride this thing all the way until the wheels fall off, if you have an opportunity in this draft where there are some pretty solid tackle prospects, I feel like now would be the time to dip into that just a little bit and take a shot at one, maybe a couple. As great as Lane Johnson is, he will not be there forever. So their thinking has got to be, hey, right now, we've got to do this. Of course, given the recent everything surrounding A.J. Brown and the coverage around A.J. Brown, they could also go in a completely different direction. And if they do that, well, then it's like a foregone conclusion that you are just going to move on from A.J. Brown. No matter how much you try to deflect the issue like it doesn't exist, that would say it all right there. I'm just, again, this is my own opinion. I'm just looking at it from the standpoint that, hey, you need offensive line help. So you go out and you get yourself some. At the number 24 overall pick, the Browns have the rights to it. And unlike Carnell Tate going late for them, because, again, they've now selected him at 6 in this mock draft, I have them going with a different offensive tackle now, seeing as Spencer Fano is off the board. I have them selecting Max Iheanacho from Arizona State, the tackle at 24. And I think that is an ideal alternative if they have to settle for taking a tackle later in the first round instead of using their first pick on it. Because, man, Max Iheanacho was a solid starter at Arizona State, holding down that edge of the line. And with Cam Robinson now away from this team, that could be a direct replacement. He's ready to go. He'll come right in and instantly produce for this Browns unit. Hell yeah. and he's going to be durable. Another thing that had been derailing this Browns line for quite a while. I mean, literally, DeJuan Jones was a tackle that they drafted from the Ohio State. He hasn't been as healthy as they would have liked. No, yeah, he's on the bigger end. Still, has not been as healthy at that spot. And that's not even mentioning Jedrick Wills Jr. They still do not know what exactly they're going to do with him. I think he is a free agent at this point. His injury list with this team was so vast that even with him having the talent, he wasn't even deemed as that important of a piece for them anymore. So picking up a tackle like Iheanacho at this spot is far more valuable than anyone might imagine at this time. At 25, I have the Bears still taking Emmanuel McNeil-Warren, the safety from Toledo. At 26, I have the Bills taking Caden McDonald, the interior defensive lineman, from Ohio State. He is, again, going to be a run stopper all the way. And you want Ed Oliver Jr. to be more of a pressure monger from that position opposite him on the defensive tackle spot. That could be a pretty good trade-off. If you ask McDonald to do anything more right now, it's going to be a struggle. But in his role, he could be a very good player instantly as a run stopper. Few people are going to be able to, once he gets his arms around them, break away from them. It's not really going to happen that frequently. I did initially have the Bills taking Akeem Mesidor for some fucking reason. And honestly, if they want to be that stupid to do it, that's their decision. I'm just like, at this point, when it comes to him, this man is literally 25 years old. Yes, he produced at Miami. Yes, he was one of the better defenders in the country at Miami last season, more than likely, depending on who you ask. Dude, like, sure, he can give you instant production, and that'd be why teams would take a stab at him, okay? Fair enough. Smart, like, you're not wrong to think that necessarily, given the experience that he possesses. It could translate very well to the pros. Take him later in the draft. Do not waste a first-round pick. The draft goes deep at multiple positions, but I would just hate for a team to put themselves in a spot where you, in some cases for most of these teams, your only first-round pick is used on that guy. You're trying to get the best of the best in the first round specifically to set the tone for the rest of your draft. And that is the best player you can get your hands on, that you think that you can get your hands on. That sends a terrible message to me. And I just, again, it's not even anything against him or the age. It's just for the purpose of what you are trying to do as a team. There's a lot more talent out there and room for growth out there. Mesidor can give you that instant production, Sure, there's also just as likely of a chance that his floor is already set with him being at 25 years old. It's not necessarily a bad thing if you're a championship contending team looking for consistent production in a rotational role for him. But if you're trying to build your future around that, what future are you going to have with a person who will be 30 years old on their second contract? And that is if they do actually pan out, if Mesidor does actually pan out. So I just would, again, wait until a later round to pick up Mesidor. He will not go undrafted, and he shouldn't go undrafted. Like, it is a wild decision to stay in college for that long. At the same time, you can't summarily punish him for that, especially with him doing what he did at Miami last season. But just wait till later. Do not make his selection the tone setter for your draft in the very first round. Don't fall for that. I'm telling you. And again, it's kind of unfair in a way as well. Because in terms of value, I can say this about Mesidor being 25 and as an edge rusher, saying that he'd have to go later in the draft. Yet, in 2012, some genius out there thought that Brandon Whedon, at the age of 28, was an optimal first-round selection. And he was a quarterback. So that thing can vary a little bit. Just to play devil's advocate there and kind of create an alternative point. So as not to just completely grill the Mesidor thing. Like, if you have the production and you prove yourself to be one of the better players in an up-and-coming draft, regardless of age, sure. I just don't think that would necessarily work here, is all I'm saying. At the 27th pick, I still have the 49ers taking Caden Proctor, the tackle from Alabama. At 28, though, with Caden McDonald gone, I have them getting Christian Miller from Georgia, another interior defensive lineman. So same position, an alternative player, but a damn good option if you don't go for the intended target and he already is taken off the board. I don't think they'd complain about that whatsoever. You just beef up that defensive line even more. Like, holy shit. Man, that would be wild. At number 29, I have the Chiefs now taking Jermod McCoy from Tennessee. And this is a very risky pick. Initially, I had them taking Monroe Freeling from Georgia. Of course, by this point, he's gone. Chances are they could still end up taking a tackle, especially with losing Jawan Taylor now. My thought process behind this is that you lose both Jalen Watson and Trent McDuffie, obviously, in one offseason. You lose Brian Cook in that same offseason and get Alohi Gilman back. Fine. You still have yet to recuperate on any of those cornerbacks. And elite ones don't just grow on trees, of course. They understand that it is going to take work to develop one into that elite category. And one of the better ways you can do that is through the draft. Jermod McCoy, yes, he did not play a full season and missed it due to a lower leg tear. That is well documented. That's out there. That is a fact. But it is something to suggest that even with that injury in mind, you have so many different people out there still saying that this man could be the best corner in the class, point blank, period. It's a huge swing to take for the Chiefs. I think they understand over the past few years, better than most, that you've got to take those swings sometimes in order to remain world champions. If that is the kind of projection that Jermod McCoy has, you might not reach on him at 9, but goodness gracious, you could be working with a steal at 29 if he's still there. And to think that they would be using the Rams pick to do it. Because I'd initially thought, oh, hey, Jermod McCoy could go to the Rams. No. They don't need a corner like that right now. With poaching the Chiefs guys. It'd be a solid trade-off. You want to caution the injuries, but you are also just as excited to get that quality talent back in your locker room and have a corner at least to build towards in the future and develop into the next elite guy. Or at least a pretty damn good number 1. At the number 30 pick, this is now controlled by the Dolphins as a result of the Jalen Waddle trade. And with it, I have the Dolphins taking Denzel Washington. Or Denzel Boston from Washington. Oh my gosh. Disregard that. Jeez. Wow. That's how I know, man. But hey, you know, we're grinding through it. Denzel Boston has been, in some cases, taken outside of the first round. And there have been a lot of other receivers who've concentrated this particular area of the first round. You've had multiple guys. McCall Lemon has fell down this far in some mock drafts. You've had KC Concepcion get selected by a few teams in some mock drafts down this area of the first round. And all those are just as likely as well. I do believe in Denzel Boston's reliability as a wide receiver. Yeah, in terms of, overwhelming star potential compared to McCall Lemon, compared to Carnell Tate, in ways he probably doesn't compare. He may not be as explosive as KC Concepcion or McCall Lemon. He's going to have to fill out his route running a little more, as Tate is, again, considered the most polished in the draft. But damn it, he's a big body. A true big body. And also has some of the surest hands in the draft. It's not all that different from how the conversation was surrounding Drake London, in my opinion. I feel like if you're the Dolphins, unless, again, as I was saying in the earlier videos through free agency and also the draft process, that they could very well tank for Jeremiah Smith in this upcoming season. Barring that, if they're already thinking ahead about it, they will try to get their hands on at least a decent wide receiver prospect by the end of the first round. And I get the feeling that Denzel Boston would more than likely still be at the spot for them. So again, not an easy call per se, but one that could line up with how they're trying to work things out through this upcoming season. You could bring in any rookie wide receiver, and they're going to have an opportunity to pretty much adjust on the fly because of how much they'll be used. We don't know what's going to happen with Tyreek Hill, but at this point, even that is up in the air as well. We, like, hell, even that kid, considering he'd have high trade value at this point, which I don't know after he's dealt with an injury. Yeah, a number of different things can happen there, so only time will tell. At the 31st overall pick, I have the Patriots taking Caleb Lomu from Utah. Initially, I had them getting their hands on Denzel Boston. Now that I think about it, they can also use some upgrades on their offensive line. Marginal as they may be, you are trying to get back to the Super Bowl. That is the ultimate goal. And it does help, again, to have reinforcements where you see fit. I tell you, if there were true reinforcements around, yes, the Seahawks pass rush was that great, but I don't know if Drake May, in an optimal situation, would have been in that kind of duress, under that kind of duress, throughout the entirety of that game. And to consider that all of it came from the side with both Will Campbell and Jarrett Wilson on it. You may not want to add to that problem with, Lomu also being a rookie here. But he also, again, is coming out of a Utah offense that was elite on the ground. That's kind of how the Patriots want to run their system, is with a more balanced attack and play action setups. So to add to that scheme in a way would not be the worst decision in the world for them. And then with number 32, I have the Seahawks selecting Keith Abney II, corner from Arizona State, who has been touted as one of the better cover corners in the entire draft. And that had been the noise surrounding him with some of the games that I was watching of Arizona State last season. Now, of course, you still have Devin Witherspoon here, and you're looking to complement that. They have Josh Jobe back. He's going to be more of a slot guy. Keith Abney II himself is like 6 foot tall, just as tall as Devin Witherspoon is. So to have 1 and 2 on the outside, covering up and bottling up different wide receivers, while having to worry about Joe's physicality over the middle. It's not going to be exactly blazing fast speed like Tariq Woolen had, but you're going to get disciplined play from that position with a corner like Abney II filling out that role, at least if they do select him there. There have been multiple mocks saying that they could also go for a guy like Jadarian Price or other corners like Brandon Zizek at this spot, which I was believing for just a little bit. There have also been reports recently suggesting, on the part of John Schneider himself, that they may look to trade these picks entirely and trade back, maybe later into the second round. And with that, they lose the 32nd overall pick entirely. So all of this projection in regards to the Seahawks pick could end up being a non-story in and of itself. But again, just honestly, like 12 hours plus and counting the hours in the minutes before that madness unfolds later on tonight. Pretty much around 17 hours and 26 minutes out. Just before everything gets underway. But that'll do it for this one. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.